Hello and welcome to the Dream Architect Life with Bryan Sweet and Brittany Anderson from Sweet Financial Partners. Bryan and Brittany, how are you today?
Doing fantastic, Eric.
So good. So ready for this.
All right. I'm excited. Thank you so much for having me back and part of this. For the listening audience, this is their second podcast. The first one was actually their inaugural podcast. You're going to want to go back and listen to that. They really talk about who they are at their core, the history of how they got into business, and then we get into some fun personal questions. And there's a couple surprises in there that you're going to want to check out. But today we're really focusing on why you guys built this podcast and what the purpose is. Is that correct?
That's what we're doing today. I think that's what I showed up to do.
I think I'll join in on that.
Show up. Yeah. So first of all, in the inaugural podcast, you spoke a little bit about why behind the Dream Architect podcast. Let's dive into it a little bit deeper. What do you want to share right off the bat of the main purpose for this podcast?
Yeah, I can take that. And Bryan, feel free to chime in. I think we've had the great fortune of being able to help so many people retire and retire well. And, as that journey has continued, and as we were thinking about this podcast and what we might talk about, one thing has become so glaringly obvious, and that's that we are really more than just advisors to our clients. We become partners in their journey. And as we started looking at this, we went, we may not be able to serve every single human being that we would love to just be able to take on. And we would love to be able to inspire and help them see possibility, but we can absolutely reach them through a podcast. So this allows us to spread the message, to help people realize what's possible, regardless of what stage they're at, regardless of if they would be best suited or we'd be best suited for each other when it comes to working together within the wealth services business.
Yeah, I want the listener to know something. I have known Bryan and Brittany for many, many years. This is not the first time they're putting educational information out there or trying to reach people where they're at. They discussed it a little bit on the first podcast, educational events that they do and bringing in speakers. You can hear more about that on that first podcast, but this isn't something they just thought, hey, let's do this for the the general public. So this is not new. This is just one more step. And in fact, an upper step, if you will, of how they're going to do that and reach people nationwide, because you guys said you have clients nationwide, right?
Yeah. Yep, we do.
Yeah. So I think that it's important to establish that. And this podcast is nationwide. In fact, it's worldwide. Anybody can listen to it anywhere. So I'm really excited that you're doing this. Bryan, let me ask you this. You've been in business a long time, and give me some of your observations. Give me some of your thoughts of what kind of led to this point, not only the podcast, but the other things that you do also.
This is a great opportunity to kind of share things that we've learned that have had an amazing impact on not only ourselves, but on our clients. And as Brittany alluded to, we want to, make people's lives better. And this is a great venue on being able to do that. And a couple of things that come to mind right off the top of my head is when we work with clients, we unfortunately find that most clients don't do enough. They don't feel like they have the capability to enjoy experiences that would really bring them joy and make their lives better. And so we literally spend a lot of time helping them realize that these things are possible when they might not otherwise do that. And I have, several examples. One client where she called, we were doing a review, and she was really depressed. And normally she's a very outgoing, happy person. And I just stopped the conversation and I said, Kathy, what happened or what's going on? You just don't seem to be yourself. And she said, well, I just talking with my family and they've got this big trip planned and I'm not going to be able to go. And I went, well, what do you mean you're not able to go? She said, well, I just, don't think I can afford it. And I went, well, you didn't even bring this up. What, give me the details. So she, quickly gave me the information. We plugged it into our planning software, and literally within minutes, I was able to tell her, well, absolutely, you can do this. And matter of fact, right when we hang up, you go get your tickets and get this thing scheduled. And literally this happened a number of years ago. And the first thing she says to me every single time we get together is, thanks again for letting me have that family vacation, because it was, a lifetime of experiences. So we just don't want people to ever have that happen when in reality, they're probably able to do things. And the other thing is, people don't probably think big enough. And that's just because when you grow up, people tend to be naysayers and say, you can't do this and you can't do that. And so one of the goals of this podcast is to get people to think out of the box and realize that literally possibilities are endless. And you need to be part of them if that's something you'd like to do to have a better life. And I'll let maybe Brittany add a couple to this.
Yeah, I think too about just conversations that we've had, whether it's during events or one-on-one meetings with clients or whatever. You get a lot of people that are like, I've got a good life. I don't really need a whole lot more. And our whole message is, yes, you have a wonderful life. And the great news is it can be even better. So, we like that word even because we don't ever want it to come across that your life is bad or it's not good enough, because I think people are constantly chasing that horizon too, which can also be a little bit dangerous. But I think it's understanding that, yes, your life is good and there's so many good things about it, but there's so much that can be added to make it even better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's the difference between, answering the question, how are you doing? I'm good. Or I'm fantastic. Right. And
Yes.
Getting people to realize that is, a possibility. And like that woman, she was doing fantastic. She had the ability to go and enjoy that and have that experience where, before she didn't have that mentality. So I love the fact that you're changing people's minds and hearts about what they're able to do and what they want to do, and helping them to explore those things. I'd like to take a step back now before we go too much further into this and actually ask you, where did the name for the podcast come from?
So I'll give a little bit of backstory because I'm going to toot Bryan's horn because he won't toot his own, and then you can jump in. So it was about 10 years ago that Mr. Sweet over here, he had a vision and he was like, I want to focus on dreams. And I don't know what that looks like or what that looks like for our clients, but we got to get to the bottom of this. So that was actually how the Dream Architect, which is our overall planning process, which has in turn become who we are as a company. It's really in that intersection. And Bryan touched on this in our inaugural, but talking about how money and mindset meet, because you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have a vision or a goal or a dream for what you want that to do for you, it's kind of all for nothing. So the Dream Architect life, Bryan touched on this too, is he is the poster child. He has worked really, really hard over the years and has put the right people in places to give him the freedom to live life by his definition of success. And the whole message behind this is being able to show people that if you define success and you put it down to what that looks like for you, you can absolutely accomplish it if you've got the right mindset, if you've got the right people in your corner, the right people cheering you on and giving you honest advice and being those kind of accountability partners for you. That's really where the premise of this lies. So Bryan, anything else you want to add there?
No, I just truly believe that every human being can have a much better life than they currently are experiencing. And it's just that they aren't aligned with people that might help them or haven't been exposed to things that share ideas on how to do it. And we just want to be one of the resources that help them understand how they can make things better. And that's really the purpose of the podcast.
That's fantastic. I can't help but I got to share something with you, because when I heard the name of the podcast and when I first started talking to you guys about it, I understood the vision, and I kind of understood the process. But as you're explaining it, it's making me picture something that I didn't expect. And I think the common theme or what people hear is, to be successful, you grow up, you get a job, you buy a house, you live in a neighborhood, and that's kind of the idea of success, and you retire at some point. And I think that a lot of people are like, okay, I need to go buy a house. And they find a neighborhood and all the houses are cookie cutter houses. I don't know about your area, but you can just look over the horizon in some certain areas around here and it's just all the same house over and over and over again, like they came out of a factory. And nobody is, or the common thought is that's success. But if you were to engage an architect that's going to design something specifically for you, how much more beautiful would that be? How much more better of a result would that be at the end of the day? And how much better would you feel about driving into your driveway the house that you built with your, with your ideas, your dreams, your visions. And so that's what I've just been picturing as you guys have been talking. I think people need to get out of that in the box mentality of this is my life. These are the houses that I should be getting, without exploring the fact that things can be tailored to them. The conversation needs to be had. And I think that that's what you guys do best.
Yeah. And Eric, I couldn't have said it any better. So thank you for being so eloquent there. But it's so true. Sometimes people, live through other people's lives, or, want to inspire to be somebody else. What you want to be is the best version of you and what's important to you and your family. And sometimes just with life circumstances and the way things go, you get forced into comparing yourself to the Joneses, if you will. And we want to help you not do that and find out what truly makes your life an experience that you just can't wait to get up every day and experience more of.
And you both just made me think of something too. There's that adage about comparison and, listening to other input. And there's the whole saying that goes, the only person you should be comparing yourself against is who you were yesterday. And that's something that I know we live by here as a team at Sweet Financial, but it's something that we also try to communicate that, hey, you know what? We're never at an age where we can't learn something new. I don't think any of us has an expiration date on our bottoms where we know when that's going to happen. So, part of this is regardless, again, of what stage of life you're in, if you're 50 years old and you are selling your business, or you're 80 years old and you've been retired for a while, there is still so much possibility and so much opportunity for your future. And that's really what we're trying to convey here.
Yeah. I just give you a quick example. When you said 80, my aunt, Jean, that I talked about in the first episode, she was 92. And she was still going to the art center, taking painting lessons. And we have a journal that we give to clients that you can write gratitude. It's got a saying in there every day of the year. And then you can write the top 3 things you'd like to get done in the day. She religiously had that thing filled up with literally every thought and idea. And she was, it's where I learned it from, but she was learning every single day. And she was excited to see what new things could pop up when she woke up that day. So she's kind of my example or shining example of what I would live up to. But just shows that at any age, you can certainly learn.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, you guys have spoken a little bit about the book, and I know that that's, when we break down what this podcast is going to be, you guys are going to be talking about the book and some of the things that are inside. Give us a sneak peek of what the audience can look forward to and what they're going to learn and what they're going to be getting out of the podcast.
Yeah, so I can take that one. So Bryan and I actually wrote the first book under Sweet Financial. He's actually got it here. So for those watching on video, you'll be able to see a little peek. But we wrote a book, and it's really the framework of what the Dream Architect is. It's the 4 steps, and it's kind of what's entailed in living that Dream Architect life and going through that process. We realized after writing it that we missed a massive component, and that was the mindset. Because you can pull people or push people through a process, but if their minds are not in the right space, it makes it really, really hard. So you might get people in here that are like, okay, yep, I'm retiring and I need to make sure that I, have a good plan and it's all solid. And you're like, okay, well, let's talk about what you want for your future. And it's deer in the headlights. So how do we get our mindsets right? How do we make sure that we are focusing on possibility versus limitations? You don't want people to lead with, well, I know I can't do this and I probably can't do that. You want them to think about what they can do and what is possible. So that's really the foundation of the new Dream Architecture book. It's laying out mindset. It's laying out, how you can surround yourself with the right people. And it's laying out what you need in order to live truly what we've talked about in that Dream Architect life. So as we go through the first, probably, I would say years worth of podcasts about, it's going to be a lot of the content that we share in the book, and we'll be able to give more examples and stories behind it. And, hoping that it'll reach and impact as many as possible.
Yeah. And then as we go, we'll also have on guest commentators on all things from health to financial things, just people that we feel you may not have ever been exposed to that would add value to your lives.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of a podcast. And the fact that you guys are recording consistently is that when things come up and people have questions, you can bring on a guest, you can bring on somebody and answer those. I would love to see a future podcast where you, the listener, get to email in some questions that you want to ask, Bryan and Brittany. I'm out of it. You can't ask me questions. I'm kidding. You can ask me too, but I won't know anything. These two are the ones in charge. Ask them some questions. We'd love to put a podcast together of Q&A, and I'll throw the questions at them. Yeah. And
like
you'll get your answers. Now, of course, they'll answer your email right away, but you can also see your question on a podcast maybe in the future. Before we close this out, Bryan, do you have any closing thoughts for today's podcast?
Well, I think one of the things that I wanted to make sure got across is I'm a big believer in dreams and possibilities, and dreams can come true. What your eyes only see and your ears only hear, what your mind thinks about. So if you think about, positive things and changes that you want to make and things like that, it's amazing what actually happens once you focus on it. And I think one of the key things is, and I have kind of got my own personal definition of a dream, and I think it's really maybe a good time to explain that. So,
yeah, please.
Where this podcast comes from is really the basis of my definition of a dream. And I'm just going to grab my notes here so I make sure I get it exactly correct. But I have: a dream is a pleasurable vision of what the future can become that fills you with energy, speaks to your heart, and strengthens your will and ability to overcome all roadblocks to achieve it. So that's really the purpose of this podcast, is to help with that mindset and get people to experience all the amazing dreams that they have and do our darndest to help them come true.
That's powerful. Very, very powerful. All right. I know that you guys are going to be sharing a ton, and the listening audience is going to gain a tremendous amount of knowledge from you guys. But if they don't want to wait for the podcast, they want to talk to you earlier than that, how do they get a hold of you? What's the best way to contact you guys?
Yes. So if they actually go to the simplified way, if they go to sweetfinancial.com, there's a wonderful contact us at the bottom of each page. So it doesn't matter where you land, at bottom of each page. Otherwise, we do have, if you are one of those that's like, hey, you know what, I want to bypass and go direct, you can email Miranda on our team. She schedules for all of our advisors, Miranda@sweetfinancial.com.
All right, guys, thank you so much for your time today. And again, thank you for letting me be a part of this podcast. I'm looking forward to you guys diving into the content of the book and sharing your guys' wisdom with the audience.
We look forward to that too, Eric. Thank you.
All right. And our last thank you goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Dream Architect Life podcast with Bryan Sweet and Brittany Anderson. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when they come out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. Again, thanks so much for listening today. For everyone at Sweet Financial Partners, this is Eric Johnson reminding you that possibility comes to those who create it. We'll see you next time.